Tonight on Talking Points, a look at the first presidential debate, plus an examination of the new government offensive in Syria. This is Talking Points. Welcome to the September 29th edition of Talking Points. I'm your host, Alex Amico, and here are tonight's top talking points. The House of Representatives and the Senate overrode a presidential veto Wednesday afternoon. JASDA, or more formally known as the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism bill, allows families of the victims of 9/11 to sue the Saudi Arabian government. 15 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia, but the country has denied any involvement in the attacks. President Obama called the overriding of his veto a mistake and said that the bill sets a dangerous precedent. A New Jersey transit train crashed into a station in Hoboken earlier this morning. Witnesses say the train barreled into the station, knocked over barriers, and crashed into the wall of the Hoboken terminal building. One person standing on the platform was killed by falling debris, while more than 100 others were injured in the train. Governor Christie called the incident an extraordinary tragedy and that the engineer of this train is cooperating with law officials. Congress has passed a spending bill 8 months after the White House asked for it in January. The House passed the bill late Wednesday night and will keep the government open through December. The bill also offers $1.1 billion toward developing a vaccine against the Zika virus. It had previously failed due to added clauses banning funding for Planned Parenthood, and Democrats threatened to block it again due to a lack of funding for Flint, Michigan's water crisis. Last night was a rough one for Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson. When asked to name a foreign leader he respected during a town hall, Johnson failed to name a single leader. Johnson said he was having an Aleppo moment in reference to an exchange last week where he could not remember the Syrian city of Aleppo. The next day, Green Party candidate Jill Stein mocked Johnson for not being able to name a foreign leader, but then could not name one herself. Residents of Charlotte, North Carolina are calling for the resignation of the city's mayor following the death of 43-year-old Keith Lamont Scott, a black man who was shot and killed by a black officer last Tuesday after refusing to drop a pistol as he exited a vehicle at an apartment complex where police were waiting to arrest someone else. What followed was a week of massive protests that resulted in looting, arson, injury, and the death of one civilian. On Saturday, police released body cam and dash cam video of the shooting to the public, but many questions remain unanswered about how the situation escalated so quickly. Here to discuss the involving investigation is national correspondent Sarah Nevins. Sarah, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So the Charlotte Police Department says that he had a gun. The family says he did not have a gun. Do we have any clarity on what actually happened?
Yeah, so even with the dash cam video, there still isn't any definitive proof that Scott had a gun on him. In the video, you can hear police repeatedly saying, "Drop a gun" to Scott before shooting him. And you can see Scott in the lower left-hand corner of the video backing away from police, but it's still not clear if he's holding anything. However, police did release photos of a pistol they say they recovered from his body.
And the police officer that shot Scott, his name is Brentley Vinson, he's on paid administrative leave now. Does it look like he's going to face any charges?
Yeah, so Charlotte Chief of Police Putney says that taking all evidence into consideration, Vinson will most likely be cleared of any wrongdoing. And it's important to keep in mind that North Carolina does have open carry laws, so Scott was allowed to have a gun. However, police are allowed to shoot if they perceive a threat, which Vinson might have if he felt that Scott was deliberately disobeying their orders.
And so the videos have been released, and some of the protesters and residents in the city are calling for Charlotte's mayor to resign. Why is that?
Yeah, so at Monday's city council meeting, residents were not only calling for the resignation of Mayor Roberts, but also of the police chief Putney and other city council members. And that's because they really feel that by delaying the release of the video for a week, they weren't doing their jobs right, and they were also kind of making a cover-up. And so they were really angry at that meeting, breaking out into chants throughout the evening, and more than 40 people took to the podium, including kids, to really express their frustration over what they feel are unjustified shootings.
And so the dash cam video that's already been released could be one of the last videos of a dash cam from a police shooting released in North Carolina. Why is that?
Yeah, so on October 1st, a new law is going to go into effect that bans the public from viewing these videos. So basically, you'll only get to view the video if you're in it or you're a family member. And the reason for this law is that as police departments are getting these body cam videos, the North Carolina governor says that it will kind of balance the protection of police with the public. And activists have already come out against this law, saying that it undermines the transparency and trust between law enforcement and the public, which is already very fragile.
Sarah and Evan, thank you for joining us. As racial tensions grow in this country, policing has become a point of much discussion. In particular, police brutality and how law enforcement officials are held accountable for their actions. A greater call for police accountability has risen in the wake of deaths such as Terrence Crutcher, Freddie Gray, and Philandro Castile. However, cases involving the conviction of an officer are very difficult to prosecute. As a result, convictions are often rare. Joining me to discuss police accountability is Talking Points contributor Thomas Viola. Tom, thank you for joining us. So, why do so few, or how often do these cases involving police officers actually go to trial?
Well, from 2005 to 2015, only 54 officers nationwide were criminally charged. Of those 54, 11 were convicted, 21 were not, and 19 cases are still pending. There are 3 others that are in extrajudicial jurisprudence right now.
And what's so difficult about prosecuting a case against a police officer?
Well, you have several problems going on. First off, a police officer's job is naturally much more high stress and can lead to a violent altercation like this much more often than, say, you or I's job. And with that comes a greater degree of leniency, which is why typically cases won't really go to trial unless there's a combination of either a victim being shot in the back, video footage of the incident, or evidence of an alleged cover-up. And all of those come together, and then they combine with things like most often prosecutors are prosecuting someone from their own police department, someone who they possibly know. There's what's called the blue code of silence, where officers can be hesitant to speak out against their coworkers.
So with this recent light being shown on police shootings, and it's become a point of much discussion, and people are calling for transparency and accountability within police departments. What are some of the things that police departments are doing to try to heed those calls, basically?
Well, the number one thing you're seeing is the introduction of body cameras nationwide. More and more people and more police departments are acquiring body camera technology so that they have more video evidence and that they can present a clearer picture of everything. In Syracuse alone, as a matter of fact, the Syracuse Police Department is getting 10 new body cameras for a rollout program this year. And DPS here at SU actually has already had them in place for almost a year.
Tom, thank you very much for joining us. Coming up on Talking Points, what came out of the presidential debate on Monday? How does it change the current race to the White House? We'll answer those questions right after this.
Well, Thomas, you've got pre-diabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have pre-diabetes. Big time.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it.
You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. God, no.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early.
You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Whoa, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
Monday night's debate was one to remember. Over 84 million people watched the debate on TV, which does not include the millions that tuned in through live streams online. It shattered the record for most watched debate of all time. The candidates did their best to show the public that they deserve the role of leader of the free world. The question is, how well did they do that? Here now to talk about the candidates, if the candidates were able to swing undecided voters, is Talking Points election correspondent Dan Prager. Dan, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
So, the praise right after, both of the candidates claimed victory. Clinton said she won, Trump said he won. Who actually won, in your opinion?
The short answer is Hillary Clinton. The big thing was that Donald Trump tweeted out about 25 separate online polls that said he won, and none of them are really scientifically accurate. They're all online polls from either conservative sites or some that Trump supporters just said, go to this poll and voted on it multiple times. So none of them really are scientifically saying that the American people thought Trump won. There was one CNN poll that was scientific, completely randomized, and said Hillary won. It's a much better indicator of who actually won the debate.
So what sort of effect could this debate have on undecided voters? Is it going to move the poll needle at all?
So it's yet to remain. We don't know specifically yet. There was a morning consult poll that said about 9% of voters had their minds changed by the debate and about 11% were undecided, which is a pretty typical number. It's not like this huge out there number like some people were expecting. But there was about a group of 27 voters that I believe CBS had after their debate that they were just talking to. I believe they were from North Carolina. And they were talking to these people. And out of the 27, only about 12 said their minds were changed or they were leaning now toward a candidate. 10 said they were for Hillary Clinton, only 2 said they were for Trump, but all of them said they would watch the other 2 debates, which is interesting because it doesn't really mean this debate did anything because there's definitely a lot of time left and anything could really change these people's minds.
So debates are famous for creating moments, creating whether they're gaffes, whether they're put downs. Moments are big in a debate. Which of these moments is going to be remembered and used by each campaign?
Well, you said gaffes, and really the most memorable moment of this debate will definitely be a gaffe made by Donald Trump. We actually have a clip of Hillary Clinton talking about Trump's tax returns, and listen very carefully to what Trump says in response.
He didn't pay any federal income tax. So if he's
smart.
paid 0, that means 0 for troops, 0 for vets.
So he says that makes me smart, which really implies that he doesn't pay income tax. And a lot of voters, especially on the internet and in that survey I was talking about before, the 27, they said that really surprised him. He's the candidate of like the middle class voter, and he says he doesn't pay a federal income tax. But some other moments, there was a moment where Hillary Clinton was attacked for her stamina and she had a very great response. So that line of attack is kind of gone for Trump now, so that might be a big non-moment. But the other 2 big moments of the debate were really what happened afterwards. There was an attack made by Hillary Clinton that Trump called a former Miss Universe contestant Miss Piggy because she gained a little bit of weight, and Miss Housekeeping because she was Latina. Now, this didn't really gain much traction during the debate, but afterwards, when asked about it on Fox and Friends, I believe, Trump said that, well, she did gain a lot of weight, so I was right to say so. And now they're currently in a feud, and whenever Trump's in a feud like that with just a random person for kind of no reason, his numbers go down.
Dan Prager, thank you for joining us. With the first debate down and the presidential race heading into the final full month of October, both campaigns are gearing up for the final push. The Clinton and Trump campaigns are scaling up in critical swing states, and here to tell us more about both ground campaigns is Talking Points chief political correspondent Josh Carney and Talking Points contributor Paul Dwyer. Guys, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start with Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a state that every year it seems like Republicans think they have a chance at winning. It hasn't gone for Republicans since H.W. Bush in 1988. What are we looking at on the ground in Pennsylvania?
I think the scale factor is pretty huge. Clinton is currently beating out 38 to 12 field offices, and it's creating a stark dynamic for the Trump campaign. The biggest thing, though, to realize about the state of Pennsylvania is 40% of those votes come within the Philadelphia region and the surrounding suburbs of that area. There are a lot of conservatives there. There are a lot of educated conservatives, and if Trump cannot pull those votes out of that specific area within the state, it's going to be very, very tough for him to win the entire state itself.
Right, and the area also has a lot of Democrats. But the counter-argument by the Trump campaign, Paul, would be that Trump is winning over disaffected registered Democrats in the western part of the state in Pittsburgh. James Carville famously said Pennsylvania is Philadelphia in the east, Pittsburgh in the west, and Alabama in the middle. Is that argument, does it hold water? Does he have a chance at making up his losses in Philadelphia with Democrats in the western part of the state?
You know, it has a little bit of water. You could definitely say, I mean, Trump is getting more of the vote outside of Philadelphia. He's really bringing out these voters in the rural areas and then like over in Pittsburgh as well. But like you were saying, the Philadelphia suburbs where Romney back in 2012 got great numbers with college-educated white voters, those numbers are down. And most people are saying that that's just going to be too much to overcome in Pennsylvania.
And now looking over to Ohio, it's pretty similar to Pennsylvania in that you've got former manufacturing areas, and then you've got urban centers and suburbs of those urban centers. What are we looking at in Ohio for both campaigns?
Ohio, the biggest thing, again, is scale, but also Trump has a huge pull in terms of just how structured the RNC is within that state. The party itself is very well set up in what is staunchly conservative state. A big problem for Trump, though, going ahead, Kasich hasn't endorsed him, and thus it's providing a real chasm for the ticket. And also, it's going to become a swing because Hillary has invested so much within her campaign to make sure that that state is up in the air.
Now, a Republican has never won the White House without winning Ohio. So, Paul, what is Trump investing on the ground in terms of ground operation in Ohio?
In Ohio, currently, Trump's at 31 offices there, and that's just over the last month. He used to have 15. He's doubled that. That's a huge factor of Kellyanne Conway becoming his campaign manager. She's really came in. She's a huge person on retail politics, getting out there. She's signed on to a lot of budgets, just getting more money into this ground game, signing campaign offices, getting signs out there, campaign RVs, everything. Kellyanne Conway is a difference that the Trump campaign needed to help that ground game.
And in terms of money, there's a notable difference in the campaigns in terms of ad spending. Josh, tell us a little about what's going on with that.
Trump is not going to be able to afford the same ad buys as Clinton, point blank. He's trying to create these donor campaigns where they're trying to raise $20 million within a week via Twitter and social media platforms. It's just not scaled in the same regard. He's applied a lot of his own money, and granted, whenever Trump speaks, he gets free advertising from the press because people will listen, but he has to be able to put in the day-to-day media press that Clinton is doing within these 3 competitive states. And when you're losing field offices by about half, especially in Ohio and Florida, it creates a huge difference in what he's able to do versus what he needs to be able to do.
Josh and Paul, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Coming up on Talking Points, how are the United States and Europe handling the ongoing refugee crisis? And how are citizens in Aleppo receiving aid from humanitarian groups? Stay tuned to find out.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent. We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness. I am a witness. I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course.
Are your children in the right car seat for their age and size? It may be too late to check when you're on the road. Fortunately, you're on the couch. Don't think you know. Know you know.
The U.S. announced Tuesday that by the end of this week, it will have welcomed more refugees than it has in the last 15 years. And State Department official Ann Richards says she's glad to see it. Well, she said, quote, "Today we are honored to provide a fresh start to nearly 85,000 of the world's most vulnerable people. But things are looking less hopeful across the Atlantic for Afghani and Iraqi refugees. They're leaving Europe in bunches, choosing to go back to their home countries where violence prevails instead of staying in places where they don't feel welcome. It's raising questions about how Europe is treating its migrants, and if it becomes an ongoing trend, it's a potential sign that refugees are simply running out of places to go for opportunity." Talking Points correspondent Josh Feinblatt joins us to answer these questions.
The dreams of opportunity in Europe are losing their luster for some refugees. The International Organization for Migration says if the trend in 2016 continues, 100,000 refugees will be voluntarily returning home to places like Afghanistan and Iraq by the end of this year. The reason for it varies. A lot of it is because many migrants who go to Europe are not granted asylum by host countries. Places like Germany say they're not required to grant asylum to these migrants, as they're not fleeing war zones like Syrians are. That usually means no work or study for Afghanis and Iraqis that come from there. On the other hand, if migrants are being seriously considered for asylum, delays are discouraging them to continue waiting, and while they wait, they have no access to benefits or language classes either. So they're faced with the decision to either stay in a host nation that doesn't provide them with the opportunity for jobs and education that they hope for, or return home where violence persists. And violence is indeed ravaging the Iraqi and Afghan landscape. In Iraq, just under 200,000 people were killed between 2014 and 2015, and the Islamic State continues to hold women and children as slaves. In Afghanistan, a resurgent Taliban is wreaking havoc, displacing tens of thousands and killing thousands as well. In the end, the fact that refugees are voluntarily returning to these places best describes the true nature of their struggle in Europe. Back to you, Alex.
A renewed fight in the battle for Aleppo came earlier this week, with Russian-backed airstrikes attacking key rebel positions with a ferocity that's led to an escalation in fighting never before seen. These strikes have crippled key infrastructure, providing water to over 2 million people as temperatures climb to over 100 degrees and key humanitarian aid is stalled. Talking Points correspondent Elijah Shama is here to break down the humanitarian crisis and the fighting in this new chapter of the Syrian civil war. Elijah, thank you for joining us. So if these pumps have been shut off, how are the people getting water?
Well, there's two ways people are getting water. The first way is that we have about 275,000 people, and an estimated 40% of those people being children drinking contaminated water. This is water that makes them susceptible to waterborne illnesses that are very easily treatable. The other way is there's actually a black market for water. Water is going for about $130 for 20 cubic meters of water. That's about 20,000 Syrian pounds. That's not affordable to an average Syrian. If you have that much money, chances are you're not still in Syria. So the options are really not there.
So with regards to the violence, the ceasefire seemed to fall apart just as soon as it started. Do both sides want the same thing?
They really don't. And what we see is that John Kerry and the UN are pushing for these ceasefires, pushing to get that humanitarian aid in. And Russia and Assad's regime, they're winning. They really feel like, why should we stop? We have the edge right now.
And so what are aid groups able to do on the ground? These airstrikes have started back up. How are aid groups still able to provide aid to these people on the ground?
It's in very, very limited capacities. The last aid that's made it into Aleppo was 2 trucks carrying vegetables, and that was about 2 weeks ago. And I think a quote from a UN aid official summed it up best. He said, "We're brave, but we're not suicidal." There's really no way for these groups to get into the city and even get aid to the affected peoples without incurring heavy losses or losing the aid in the process.
So the U.S. is supporting in this fight a coalition that includes a rebel offensive. Who are we supporting and how are we supporting them?
Well, we have 3 major groups that we're supporting. The first is the Peshmerga, the Kurdistani Peshmerga. The second is the Free Syrian Army, and it's the third one that's kind of raising some eyebrows. It is, or was, part of al-Qaeda in Syria. It was the al-Nusra Front. Now they've renamed themselves to Jabhat al-Nusra in an attempt that many see as a way to garner more Western support for their cause.
And so, with regards to the fight for Aleppo, how is the tide turning?
Well, it's moving very slowly, but it definitely is moving one way. We're seeing kind of the Syrian army and their Iranian and Hezbollah and Russian allies pushing the line inches, feet, but we're not seeing major gains. We're going to see this continue for a good long while, but they are winning right now.
So what comes next in this fight? What comes next with diplomatic negotiations and with military action?
Well, it's interesting because I think what Western powers have really failed to do is kind of come up with a united front. We see Russia and we see Iran, they're really working together on this, and that's really what's helping the Syrian government keep pushing and making these advances while the US-backed forces are largely in disarray. So what we need is kind of everyone to get on the same page politically.
Elijah, thank you for joining us. We'll be right back.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. It's gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Okay, quick. Oh yeah, yes. So much fun. Mwah. We're getting so wet.
Welcome back. Finally, Tuesday was National Voter Registration Day. The right to vote has always been something that's very near and dear to me. One of my earliest memories is in the 2000 election. When I was 6 years old, my grandpa took me into the voting booth and let me pull the lever for Al Gore, then gave me his I voted sticker. So I picked a winner right off the bat. This summer, I spent 10 weeks reporting on the current state of voting rights and spent part of that time in Alabama, in the cradle of the civil rights movement, talking to people who fought for the right to vote so many years ago. I met a woman in Selma named Joanne Bland. She was 11 years old in 1965 when she participated in the Bloody Sunday March at the Edmund Pettus Bridge that hospitalized so many activists. She was the youngest marcher there that day, and shortly after their actions at the bridge, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act. I met a man in Whitehall named John Jackson. He was a teenager during the voting rights movement of the 1960s. He helped start a new political party in Lowndes County. He helped recruit black members of the community to run for local office, and eventually he was mayor himself for decades. He told me that his whole mission in the 1960s was to convince black people in his community to get involved and run for office, and that seeing President Obama get elected was the happiest moment of his life because it was the fulfillment of his mission. I met a man in Tuskegee named Johnny Ford. In 1972, he ran to be the first black mayor of his hometown. He loaded black students from the university onto buses and took them down to the board of registrars to register them to vote. When the whites that ran the board saw all the students coming, they locked the doors and refused to register them. Ford filed a lawsuit the next day, and thanks to the Voting Rights Act, he won. He got 150 new voters registered, and he was elected mayor by 127 votes. He's still the mayor today. Seeing real, up-close and personal examples of people who fought for their own right to vote and then saw the rewards of that right was a truly incredible experience. In a few weeks, we'll all have the chance to exercise our right and pick who we want to be our president, our congressmen, our senators. Before we go into that voting booth, or before we drop our absentee ballot in the mail, we should pause for a moment. Take a minute to think about the legions of people who bled, fought, and even died so the right to vote could be extended to all Americans. The path that the ballot traveled through our history that led to your hand is paved with heroes, obstacles, triumphs, and tragedies. Whoever you decide to vote for, just take a minute to think about the awesome power, noble history, and profound courage that are all packed into that little sheet of paper. That's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for watching. Be sure to follow CitrusTV on Twitter and Instagram, as well as all of our content on the brand new CitrusTV.com. I'm Alex Amico. Have a great evening, Syracuse.